Good morning, everybody. It's great to be invited here along with my colleague, Kath. We don't often get to work together, so it's nice to do a bit of a tag team, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. I'm going to start off by talking to you about Money Helper, a few things that are going on in the world in terms of finances at the moment and where you can get support around your finances. And in particular, I know there'll be a lot of women on the call today, and at Money Helper we really want to support women to engage with their finances. So the first part of the session will be around that, and then Kath will come in and talk to you about pensions and also the impact of menopause symptoms on decision making, finances, etc. So we hope you get something out of it. It's something that we're both very passionate about, and it's a great opportunity to share this information with you. So I'll just make a bit of a start now. So we are Money Helper. So we are an arm's length body of the Department for Work and Pensions, and we're here to provide free, impartial money information and guidance. And our remit is there to support everybody across the UK, to give them some sort of financial education and help them to make financial decisions. So our branding, it used to be Money Advice Service, Pension Wise, and the Pensions Advisory Service, but we're now one entity and we are known as Money Helper. So please look out for us, and there'll be some stuff to signpost you to later as well. And I'm going to talk about financial well-being initially. So we have a definition of financial well-being, and that it's about feeling secure and in control of your money. It's about making the most of your money every day, being able to deal with the unexpected, those little blips in the road that come along, like your MOT, car MOT, your washing machine breaking, things like that. And also wanting to be on track for a healthy financial future. And by doing those things, we can become resilient, confident, and empowered to make decisions about financial services and products. And this is sort of a little bit of state of the nation information. Every 3 years, we do a financial capability survey. And these are sort of the latest results, and that doesn't take into consideration the current situation that we're in terms of rises to cost of living. So we know that when we next do the survey, things might be even worse than this. But there's 53 million adults across the UK. Nearly 10 million of us have fallen behind with our bills and credit commitments. And, you know, we're not able to make those on a regular basis. Over 10 million of us have got less than £100 in savings. So when we talk about financial resilience and having a buffer, there's quite a large number of people that haven't got that, and that really sort of leads to mental health stressors, relationship breakdown, etc. So money in itself has a massive impact on all areas of our life. And then 27 million of us don't feel confident in making decisions about our finances. And we don't learn about money in school very often. Only a few people do that, or a few people remember about those lessons. So we're working across the board from sort of pocket money to pensions to try and support that financial education. But, you know, feeling confident about making decisions when you are feeling comfortable in your own body is one thing, but when you can't sort of gauge what you're going to feel like from one day to the next in terms of having menopause symptoms, then that makes it even more difficult to make those decisions, and we're going to touch on that later on. So just wanted to touch on a little bit of information. There was changes yesterday, just so that you know what support is out there in terms of cost of living rises. The second payment of the cost of living payment to benefit claimants is due between the 8th and the 23rd of November, and that'll be around £324, that one, and that is if you are on universal credit. So if you are having in-work benefits paid, then you may be entitled to this additional cost of living payment. And then the other thing, just again, we're all about talking about money at Money Helper, and we want to spark those conversations off. So if you are, you've got an older person within your family or friendship group, etc., just let them know that there will be an additional £300 cost of living payment if they're already in receipt of winter fuel payments. So that just gives them a bit of additional support in terms of their bills. And then people receiving non-means tested disability benefits have already received a payment of £150. Now, yesterday, there were a lot of changes in terms of what the government have decided to do, and the Chancellor announced a change to the energy price cap guarantee. That was supposed to be in place for 2 years. They've changed that now to next April. It will finish next April, and that's to tide us over the winter. But I really want to just sort of get the message out there that the energy price gap guarantee is not a guarantee on what you're going to pay as part of your bill. It's a guarantee of the maximum cost of each unit of gas and electricity. So if you use loads and loads of it, then your bill will go up and up and up. So it's just sort of being aware of that, because some people think that that's the most they're ever going to pay, and that's not factually correct. So just wanted to share that bit of information, and that changed yesterday. And then we know that women are really good at managing household finances, budgeting, looking after everybody else. But things are really, really tight at the moment. There's sort of things coming at you from all angles. You go to the shops, everything's gone up. You go and fill your car up, still prices are really high. You're sort of worried about putting the radiators on, etc. So we've got a really good budgeting tool, which I'll show you in a minute, which can help with that and just give you a snapshot of where you are financially. So I'll come on to that in a minute. And then it's really important that if you are on a lower income, you check out whether you're entitled to any in-work benefits. I know quite a lot of people working within the healthcare sector do actually qualify for universal credit payments. So it's really important to go on the gov.uk website and see if that would apply to you, because it can make a significant difference to what you're getting in each week and each month. There's other things to think about at the moment in terms of just sort of trying to get a little bit of cash back, saving money on energy suppliers, phones, etc. We signpost a money saving expert, Martin Lewis. He really has got his finger on the pulse about what deals are out there. And I know at the moment there is a bank account switch that if you switch your current account, you can get around £200 cash back. So there's quite a lot of things out there, if you just take a little bit of time to look, that could make a significant difference to your finances. So a money saving expert is a good way to go. And then there's been a lot in the press and on the news around mortgages and the Bank of England interest rates, etc. Again, going back to this talking about money message, if you are worried about your mortgage payments, or you'd come to the end of a fixed rate, really important to speak to your lender, your mortgage provider, just to see what's available out there and if there is going to be any support if the rate goes up significantly. So really stress that if you're thinking, oh crikey, my fixed rate finishes next year, I don't know what's going to happen, talk to your lender. Really, really important. And they've got whole departments there ready to have those conversations with you. So I can't stress that strongly enough. Have the conversation earlier on and sort of start to deal with things, put your mind at rest. In terms of insurances, there was a change earlier on this year, so that if you bought your car insurance, your house insurance, you normally, if you swapped it, you normally got a decent discount. But then the next year when you came to renew, the price went up again. So what the law change was that providers aren't allowed to keep sort of moving the goalpost in terms of existing customers. So you shouldn't see big jumps in your insurance premiums. However, it is still worth looking at what's available out there and shopping around. And we were just talking about shopping lists and stuff before we started this conversation, and really big believer in using cashback apps, loyalty cards. So your club card, your Lidl app, all those sort of things. It's worth using those just to get that extra sort of saving on your shopping each week or each month as well, can make a big difference. And then also check your bank accounts, see if you're paying for stuff that you no longer need. One of my colleagues was actually paying for 3 lots of Sky subscription, and he only found out when he came to move house and he was sort of doing his budgeting about what he could borrow, and he realized he was paying 3 lots of Sky subscriptions. So it is worth taking that couple of minutes to go through your bank statements and see what you're spending your money on. So this is what our website looks like, Money Helper. There is so much information on there, anything and everything to do with money. Have a look at it, really, really informative. But also, if you don't want to trawl through the website, you can talk to us. So we've got 2 free telephone numbers. One is around money guidance, so any questions you've got about your day-to-day money. But then we've also got a pension guidance helpline as well. And we do web chat and WhatsApp. But if you've got any pension queries, and Kath's going to talk to you about that in a bit as well, you can do that by having a conversation, ringing us up and engaging with us that way. This is what our budget planner looks like. I mentioned that earlier, and it's a really good way of just getting things down and sort of understanding where you are with your finances. So it gives you a page where you can put all your different bits of income that you've got coming in. So that might be income from your job, in-work benefits, as I said, any pension payments that you're getting, other things like that you can put in there. So you know exactly what you've got coming in each week or each month. And then you go through a drop downs of all the things that you spend your money on, just, you know, ranging from swimming lessons for your children, cost, you know, going to Costa Coffee, etc. It prompts you to put everything that you spend in there. Once you've done that exercise, it gives you a nice pie chart, shows you the segments where you're spending your money, and it might just give you a bit of a steer as to sort of think about, right, okay, I don't need to do that as much anymore. I can move some of that into this section, and it gives you a really good foundation from which to work. So have a look at that, really useful. And coming out of the back of the pandemic, which I know we're still in, I'm talking to healthcare professionals here, and I know you're really sort of struggling with this, but we devised some more tools and resources to sort of help people overcome what happened during the pandemic in terms of their money. But then we've now gone into the cost of living rises. So this is really useful for now and very timely. And it's around managing your money in uncertain times. Got really good stuff on there, dealing with debt, money problems and complaints, and scams as well. And we need to raise awareness of scams, because when people start to struggle with money, people start to panic, make decisions that are not good for them. And those scammers are in there as quick as you like, trying to get whatever money you've got left off you. So there's some really good information of what to look out for there. And in terms of the managing your money in uncertain times, we've got the bill prioritizer tool, which is really useful. It's got all the different bills that you're likely to have to pay. You can click on those, see the importance of them, the priority that it takes in terms of the pecking order, and sort of take action accordingly. It tells you what to do if you're struggling or worried about those bills. But just to put that in context, if in some parts of the UK, if you don't pay your council tax, you could ultimately end up in prison, whereas if you don't pay your Sky subscription, that's not likely to happen. So it's a really useful tool to see what are the things that you really need to prioritize in your payments. And then if things are getting a little bit tense and you are really worried and you're not able to make payments on things, we can provide free debt advice through our partners such as Citizens Advice, the Money Advice Trust, etc. And we've got a free debt advice locator tool. So if you put your postcode in, it'll bring up your nearest free regulated debt advisor. And I keep stressing free, because if you put it, you know, what I want debt advice in Google, the sort of top 10 things will either be a scam or somebody charging you for the privilege of talking to you about your debt. You don't need to do that as a first go. If you use our site, then you will go straight through to a safe, free regulated debt advisor. So that's another useful thing there as well. And sort of lastly, before I pass on to Kath, I put this slide in here, how to teach kids about money, because I think at the moment, children and young people are hearing lots and lots of different things in the news, all over social media. I was doing one of these sessions for the Sheffield Children's Hospital, and one of the people on there actually said that her daughter had come back from school after an assembly. She was really traumatized by what had been said in the assembly, and they'd done a cost of living crisis assembly. She thought they were going to lose the house. She thought they weren't going to be able to have food on the table. So it's really important that we take control of the situation with our young people. And on the Money Helper website, there's loads of really useful information, hints and tips about how to start those conversations off with our young people, games to play, just little exercises to do, just puts us in control of the situation and enables us to influence our young people in the right way. So that was a little bit around financial well-being, budgeting, etc. And now I'm going to pass over to Kath, who's going to get to the main event that I know you're all waiting for. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jenny. And just one thing, I was watching Richard Osman's House of Games yesterday, and he had a question on there about how much on average people are paying for these Sky subscriptions, Netflix, gyms, all this kind of thing, that they're not actually using. And the average was something like £600 a year. So £50 a month on average people are spending on things that they're not actually using. So yeah, amazing. So this session is about money and menopause, and most people who are reaching menopause will be starting to think about their retirement in some way, but we tend not to think too much about how much income we'll have in retirement, or how much we'll need, or where that money will come from. So we tend to sort of just walk into retirement, a lot of us just hoping everything will be okay rather than planning for it really financially. So our retirement money might come from a number of sources, but your state pension and your workplace pension are likely to be a significant part of what you use to fund that retirement. So starting paying into a workplace pension early is ideal because it's easier to pay a little into a pension over many years than to pay a lot in over just a few years. But it's never too late to start, because even saving a small amount of money can be a great help when you get to retirement. So if we could get the next slide, please. And the state pension is separate to any workplace pensions that you pay into. There's a little bit of confusion sometimes with that, because we've got these workplace pensions that the government have put legislation in place for, but the state pension is separate, and you pay into that and you build up entitlement by paying your national insurance or by getting national insurance credits. The full new state pension is now £185 a week, or £9,628 a year. And to get that, you need to either pay or be credited with at least 35 years of national insurance. And you will get some state pension if you've paid in for at least 10 years. So it's not an all or nothing. You pay in 10 years for that. If you pay in sort of 30 years worth of national insurance, then you'll get a pro rata amount of that full amount. But about 90% of people would be expected to get the full amount these days. So you can check your state pension age and how much you expect to receive by contacting the pension service. And that's part of the Department for Work and Pensions. They're the people that pay the state pension. And once you get that statement, you can contact Money Helper and we can explain those figures for you if you're not sure what it's telling you. A lot of people get the statement and they're not really quite sure the amount they're going to receive and whether there's anything they can do about it, such as paying extra contributions in to get them up to a full amount. So please do give us a call about those sorts of things. Now, although the state pension is going to be very useful in retirement, most of us will be hoping for more than £9,628 a year to live on. And that's where a private pension comes in. And also with the rising state pension age, the fact that you can access your private pension earlier is going to be really important to a lot of people. So the current state pension age is 66, and that's going to rise to 68 for people born from 1978 onwards. And you cannot take your state pension early. So you might have to wait a long time to get that state pension. You might not want to work that long. So the minimum age that you can take a private pension is currently 55. And that's going to rise in 2028 up to 57. And the idea is that it will remain 10 years below your state pension age. So if you want to retire early, if you want to give up work, or if you want to reduce hours or something like that, that's up to 10 years of being supported by your private pension before the state pension kicks in. So it's really important to think about that private pension as being something that's going to give you additional income in retirement, but also is perhaps going to give you a bit more flexibility. So can I have the next slide, please, Jenny? And the amount that you need in retirement will depend very much on your circumstances. So, for example, whether you need to pay rent will make a huge difference, but also the lifestyle that you want, whether you've got savings you can use, whether you have a partner, and so on. All these things will make a big difference to the amount that you can expect to want to live on in retirement. So this table illustrates data from a study where retired people were asked how much they had to live on and how comfortable they were financially. So it's sort of real data, really. And these figures were updated in October 2021, and these figures are for people living outside London. Now, these figures don't allow for paying mortgage or rent or social care costs, and it's a gross amount, so it's before tax. So if you do need to pay mortgage or rent into retirement, then you're going to need more than these figures. You don't pay national insurance on your pension income, so that's a positive with these figures. It's also worth pointing out that pensions, including the state pension, are paid to the individual. You don't get a couple's rate. So the amount of state pension shown here for a couple is 2 full state pension amounts. So that's assuming that both people in a couple would get that full amount each. So as an indication of, what are we talking about with the minimum standard? So this minimum lifestyle is hoping to cover all your basic needs. And this was really set up in conjunction with the Joseph Rowntree Foundation of what you need for a basic standard of living. So it will have some left over for fun and social occasions. So you could holiday once a year in the UK, eat out maybe once a month, do some kind of affordable leisure activities a couple of times a week. And about 3/4 of employees are likely to achieve at least this minimum standard. The moderate lifestyle gives you that extra financial security that Jenny was talking about, a bit more flexibility. And I think we can all appreciate over the last few years that having a bit of security, a bit of extra wiggle room is really important for our mental well-being and so on. So with this level of income, you could perhaps have a foreign holiday once a year, eat out a few times a month, and maybe have the opportunity to do more of the things that you want to do. Have a second-hand car, this type of thing. About half of employees are expected to have an income between the minimum and the moderate level. And then if we look at the higher level, so this would be a lifestyle that gives you more opportunity to be spontaneous with your money, having subscriptions to streaming services, having regular beauty treatments, having a couple of foreign holidays a year, and so on, getting a new car renewed every sort of 2 or 3 years. And about 1 in 6 employees are projected to have an income between the moderate and the comfortable level. And it's interesting on the website for this, the Pension Living Standards Association, it says that the standards are part of a 3-step journey, which is awareness, understanding, and action. And that's entirely the sort of thing that I want to get across to you today when talking about your pensions and menopause. It's having some awareness of the issues and understanding of how your pensions work, and giving you that opportunity to take action with some sort of informed knowledge there. So if we go on to the next page, please. So we've got a few tools on our website. So the research is a really good starting point for giving you some kind of ballpark figure of what you might want to aim for. But how much you need for the lifestyle that you want in your circumstances is very personal to you. And thinking about your income and outgoings now and how these are likely to change when you retire is a useful exercise. So this is one tool we've got on there. It's just a PDF worksheet to help you think about what your income and outgoings now are and how those are likely to change in retirement. So that will give you, I think, a clearer idea of, you know, my mortgage is going to stop. I'm going to stop paying for the children doing this, but I want to take more holidays, and we only need one car as a family instead of two, or whatever you think is going to change for you. And you can think about in real terms, to keep this kind of standard of living, how much money do I need to live on? We've also got a pension calculator tool, which will help you add up the pensions that you've got, think about how much that's going to give you in retirement as well. So that's on the same page as this worksheet. It's also a good idea to get that state pension forecast, so you know that you're going to get the full amount or what to do if you're not going to get that amount. So just knowing what your state pension age is, how much you're going to receive at that point, give you a good foundation for knowing how much you're going to have in retirement. But also make sure you've got details of any other pensions you paid into. So you might know about your current workplace scheme, but what about somewhere where you worked years ago, or that personal pension you paid into for a few years? Really useful to get all the details of those, get some statements and try and understand what those figures mean. And again, if you need help finding those pensions or understanding what the statements are telling you, give us a call at Money Helper. Kevin, the next slide, please. And when we're talking about pensions and private pensions, it's really important to understand that there's two different types of private pension that you might well have on top of your state pension. So some employers will give you the promise of a pension. This is pretty much only public sector jobs now, such as local government or the NHS, and it's what's called a defined benefit or DB scheme, as it's the benefit that you receive that's defined by the calculations in the scheme rules. So once you've paid your contribution, it's up to the scheme to make sure there's enough money in the scheme pot to pay your benefits. You will have the choice about when to take the pension. So if you take it early, you will get less per year because it's going to pay out for longer. And you also get the choice of how much tax-free cash you take at retirement. So there might be a minimum level, there might be a maximum level, but you can choose between those two. And with this type of pension, you take the cash and the pension at the same time. When you're paying into these schemes, you do get tax relief on your pension contributions at your marginal income tax rate. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, that's 20%. And the 20% tax that you would have paid on that money if it had not gone into the pension goes into the pension for your future benefits. That's how tax relief works. When you take your pension, you also have the choice of taking that tax-free cash lump sum, so that's another tax benefit. And there are death benefits payable to your loved ones if you pass away before or during retirement. Now, personal pensions and most employer schemes outside the public sector are what's called defined contribution or DC pensions. And a DC pension is a pot of money that you and your employer, if you're in an employer scheme, pay into. Now that money is invested and hopefully grows over time. You may have seen over sort of recent weeks and months slight issues with investments. Obviously, world events mean that a lot of investments have fallen in value rather than grown. But a pension is a long-term savings plan. And so over time, history tells us that it will always go up in value if it's invested. But with a defined contribution scheme, you don't know in advance how much you'll get because it will depend on how those investments perform, and it will depend on the cost of providing your retirement options when you get to retirement age. You can still use your defined contribution pension to get that guaranteed income for life, but you can also use it in other ways, such as taking a more flexible income that you can change as you go along or as lump sums. But taking your pot flexibly could mean that it runs out. So you do need to consider your options carefully, consider how quickly you take money out and so on. What is right for you? Do you want that guaranteed income for life, knowing it's going to pay out for as long as you live? Or would you like more flexibility? And it might be that you choose a little of both. So if we go on to the next slide, please. This is just a really basic overview of how public sector pensions work, because I think a lot of you will be in public sector schemes such as the NHS or local government. So with these schemes, older benefits were known as final salary. Now, this is because as you paid into the scheme, you built up years of pensionable service. And then when you left the scheme or you retired, the total number of years that you had built up was multiplied by a final pensionable salary. So all your pension was based on a salary at or towards the end of your career. The normal retirement age is the point at which benefits are calculated in that way and are payable in full. So it's a calculation point, is that retirement age, and it's usually 60 or 65. And if you take your pension earlier than that, then you're going to get less per year normally because it's going to pay out for longer. So the normal pension age on the scheme doesn't mean you have to wait until that point. It means that's the calculation point. That's the point when you get the full amount that's quoted on your statements. Now, the public sector schemes changed to a career average basis from 2015, and everyone who's in one of these schemes now is in a career average or care scheme from April 2022. The normal retirement age in these sections is the same as your state pension age, and each year that you pay into the scheme, you build up a block of pension based on your earnings in that year. That block is then banked, and then each year the banked blocks will get this inflationary increase so they don't fall in value due to inflation. So every year that you pay into the scheme, you build up another block, another block, another block, another block. Now, this has been a really brief overview of the schemes, and we can provide more detail either on our phone lines or we do other presentations focusing on an employer's particular pension scheme. So if you want one of those, please contact us or contact your employer. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So giving you a brief overview of pensions, but why are we talking about menopause and pensions? And it's something that even my colleagues, when I talk about this, it's like, well, what's the connection? It's not necessarily obvious until you think about it. So 400,000 women start menopause each year, and over 70% of those women will feel that their performance at work is likely to be affected. So 25% of people going through menopause experience severe or life-changing symptoms, such that they consider giving up work as a result. And it's estimated that 1 million women have left the workplace completely due to menopause symptoms, because 23% of women who have symptoms have left work as a result of them. So really significant problem, not just for the individual, but also for the employer, and especially in certain employers like the NHS, as a 77% female workforce. They don't want to lose all their top staff in their 50s taking early retirement because of this condition. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So it's also, really important for the individual, because women typically have about half the pension pot that a man has at retirement anyway. So they usually live longer and they have to spread that pot out for longer as well. And there are a number of reasons for that pensions gap. So we've got the gender pay gap, which is 25% in women over 50. So obviously, if you're earning less, the chances are you're paying less into a pension, because your contributions or the benefit you build up is normally based on your salary. So if you've got a lower income throughout your working life, you're going to get a lower pension. Also, women typically have more career breaks. So if you take time off work to bring up children, for example, you will retain over the past few years, you will retain full pension contributions for the period of paid maternity leave, but not during unpaid maternity leave. So usually you wouldn't get any workplace pension building up if you're unpaid maternity leave. And then a lot of women will work part-time. So 75% of part-time workers are women, and they will tend to have lower wages. So it might be due to caring for children, it might be due to caring for adults in the family. But if they have lower wages, they might be excluded from the new regulations on automatic enrolment. So if you earn less than £10,000 a year, you aren't automatically put into the employer scheme, and you might lose out on that workplace pension. Also, women over 50 are twice as likely to provide unpaid care for others than men. And divorce will tend to increase the pensions gap because women are more likely to waive rights to a partner's pension, and only 3% of people seek financial advice as part of their divorce settlement. Now, of course, with planning, women can make sure they pay extra into pensions when they're able to, and consider pensions when making decisions about work and savings. But most of us, because we have little understanding of pensions and little understanding of these issues, we don't tend to do that. So if we go on to the next slide, and of course, another reason for this pensions gap is menopause. So I mentioned a lot of women retire early. That's going to have an effect on your pension. Any of us might want to change our jobs at any time and for many reasons, but menopause is a time when many women do struggle with their jobs. And if that's the case, it's important to think about all of your options, especially as some decisions can be irreversible. So if you take a pension, normally you've taken it, you can't undo that decision. So options such as retiring early or reducing hours, they're not just affecting your current income, which might be what you think about, but it's going to affect the income for the rest of your life. So you really need to consider these things carefully. And especially when your symptoms might be temporary and they might be treatable. So thinking of your menopause symptoms as perhaps a long-term but temporary condition rather than a permanent change might be useful as well. And it's important to think to give yourself time to think about this calmly. So we might have brain fog, anxiety, fatigue, and other issues that affect our ability to make decisions, especially something that's as complex as a pension, which, as we know, most people don't really understand. So understanding those options with your pension, knowing that you can talk them through with me or one of my colleagues without any sort of judgment or people talking down to you, can be really helpful. Also, discussing your problems with your doctor and your employer might give you options for coping with those symptoms. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Just trying to illustrate how making decisions about your work will affect your pension. So if you're in a final salary scheme, then if you start to find work more difficult, if you have fatigue, brain fog, aches and pains and so on, you might think about reducing your hours, taking on a different role with less stress, that kind of thing. So how does that affect your pension? So if you worked part-time while you're a member of a final salary scheme, you build up a part year of pensionable service at your full-time equivalent pay. That's how the calculations work. So reducing your hours now won't affect any of that previous final salary pension that you've already built up. So that's good to know. However, if you have final salary benefits that are still linked to your wage, which a lot of people will have, reducing your rate of pay, such as dropping down a grade to reduce the level of responsibility, can affect those previous final salary benefits. It might not affect your pension straight away. It will depend on the rules of the scheme, but it's really important that you contact your pension scheme to ask about this if you're considering reducing your full-time equivalent salary. Do understand how that is going to affect those final salary benefits. So if we go on to the next slide and looking at how this works in a care or career average scheme. As I said earlier, with this kind of scheme, you're building up blocks of pension based on how much you've earned in that year, and then that is banked. So whether you earn £20,000 working full-time or £20,000 working part-time doesn't matter as far as building up this type of pension. And if your salary decreases for whatever reason, it won't affect those previous blocks of pension that have been banked. It will reduce the rate at which you build up more pension in the future. Remember, though, that you might be in a career average section now, but if you've got final salary benefits that are still linked to your current salary, those could be affected if you reduce your rate of pay. So if you go on to the next slide, please. And at Money Helper, we don't provide financial advice, but it is safe to say that we strongly suggest that you take time to think about any decisions that are relating to your pension. And it's particularly important not to rush into anything if you're feeling exhausted, stressed, hopeless, overwhelmed, and so on. So, as I said earlier, hopefully your menopause symptoms will be temporary, so you can ask for help from your GP or your menopause clinic to help cope with those symptoms, and speak to your employer about options that will help you to remain in work. So I know I speak to women sometimes, or I see comments on Facebook or whatever, where women don't feel able to take sick leave because of menopause. But of course, if you are too ill to work, then you can consider sick leave in those circumstances. If you feel that you just need a bit of a time out, a career break, you could consider that. Ask your employer, could I have 6 months off, a year off, and then come back? Maybe some kind of temporary role change, or even just some reasonable adjustments will be all that's needed to help you cope. So reasonable adjustments could be working from home, not suitable for everyone. It could be a change in uniform. It could be a change in shift. It could be all sorts of things. Whatever's going to help you, your employer may have a menopause policy and may be really keen to actually help you fulfill your career as best you can. If you do decide to leave your current job completely, do make sure you consider the full benefit package, including your pensions, when you look at what a job will pay you. So, as I said, the public sector will have these defined benefit pensions. Your employer will be paying in maybe 20-25% of your salary on top of what you're actually receiving into that workplace pension. In the private sector, then you are looking at a minimum contribution from the employer of 3% of your income on a salary band. So it's not even necessarily whole salary. So the pension provision and other benefits such as death in service benefits can be very different. And if you're able to, you can consider paying more into pensions when you can afford to do that in order to compensate for time out of the workplace or working part-time. Now, I've concentrated here on the public sector pensions, but you would have all the same sorts of issues with a pension in the private sector. So you do have more flexible options with those, but of course, if you stop paying into a pension early, whatever type of pension it is, and if you take that pension early, then you've got a smaller amount of pension to spread out over a longer time. So that can have a really significant effect on the amount of income that you receive, not just for the next few years up to your normal retirement age or up to state pension age, but for the rest of your life through your 70s and 80s and 90s. So do think about the longer term when you're making these decisions, and please do talk to healthcare, talk to your employer, and talk to your pension provider and to us at Money Helper to understand all the factors that go into that. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Jenny mentioned scammers, and they will try to get money out of us in any which way they can, and more that we haven't thought of. So pensions is no exception to that. There is a great deal of legislation and safeguards in place with pensions, but it is still important to be aware of the warning signs, because if you are scammed, whether it's an investment scam on Facebook or a pension scam, you might not get any of the money back. In a pension, you might actually end up paying tax on that money that you've lost as well. So good things to know is no one's allowed to contact you out of the blue about pensions. So anyone doing that is acting illegally from the start, so you don't deal with them. Now, in order to get around that, there are adverts on social media, internet search engines that will ask you to provide your information in order to get an annuity quote or a free pension review. Now, those companies are not normally regulated and they will pass on your details to other organisations. And you've given them permission to contact you, so you've kind of opened yourself up a little bit. So anyone tries to tempt you with fancy investments with a high rate of return, time-limited offers, please be wary. Again, this is pensions, it's investments, it's cryptocurrency, it's anything else. Any contact out of the blue should be reported to the Information Commissioner's Office, who deal with the security of personal data. And general rule is if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So please just don't engage with scammers. Jenny mentioned we've got information on our website about scams. We also have a dedicated helpline for scams, which covers pensions and everything else. So if you've been a victim of fraud or scamming, there is someone there to speak to. So if we could just go on to the next slide. These are the contact details for Money Helper. So at the top there, we've got our pensions general helpline and our web chat. We also have the PensionWise service, which is specifically to discuss pension options for people over 50 with a defined contribution type of pension pot. So that's a specific type of appointment. We also do appointments for people going through divorce, people who have been missold or scammed out of pensions, and we have appointments for people going through a pension transfer as well. And then at the bottom, Jenny mentioned it, we've got a helpline for money guidance, and that covers the whole wide range of things, such as debts, mortgages, savings, writing a will, making a power of attorney, redundancy, all sorts of things covered in there on the helpline and on the chat as well. So just going to the last slide. Thank you for listening to myself and Jenny today. I hope you found that useful. I will put a link in the chat box to a feedback survey. It just takes a couple of minutes if that's okay. But we'll open it up to any questions, please, either in the chat or speak up.